have to get the cow back in calf fertility, because if the cow calves early and she is more days in milk to give more. Grass is the obvious second, and some would put it first, is that tons of grass grown and kind of utilised.
Hello, I'm James Dunne, and you're welcome to the Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights, and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. With the level of data available to dairy farmers increasing all the time, David Hannon, dairy farmer from County Meath, joins me to talk about how he uses data to drive better decisions on his farm. I started by asking David to give an overview of his farming enterprise.
I'm farming with my daughter Laura and my wife Catherine, and we're farming in County Meath with 330 spring calving dairy cows and replacement heifers. We work at the moment, we're in a transition period with labour. We have 3 kind of relief milkers at the minute, but before that we had 2 full-time guys.
And in terms of, you mentioned that transition in labour, in terms of what's the plans, I suppose, there? You're kind of working with more relief staff at the minute. What sort of a mix would you like to see, David?
We're looking now at having 1 full-time guy. Because Laura's home with me, we'll have 1 full-time guy, and we will kind of still try to have some relief kind of milkers for weekends, and the odd time that we need that we're all off together. So yeah. Just it's probably a better fit, considering where we're going.
Flexibility, David, does it? Sorry.
It does. What we found, we went kind of from having 1 full-time guy to 2, and we kind of end up losing the relief milkers, and just it's nice to have the backup of kind of relief guys, and also too it's good to have young people kind of coming in that are interested, and kind of to keep them there in the system.
When we are on that topic, and we're a little bit off topic, but we'll get to the topic now in a few minutes in terms of specifically that I want to talk to you about, but just managing, in terms of how you actually manage your farming along with Laura, how have you divvied out the tasks, or have you took separate responsibilities, or how was that transition over to farming with Laura happened?
The kind of, we'll call it general day-to-day running stays with me. Laura looks after the labour and the kind of the relief guys to make sure that the rota is kept filled, and she looks after the grassland management and the heifers. I suppose I look after kind of then the rest, maintenance and whatever else, and I have become more or less the worker now, in certain ways.
Yes, exactly. So you have kind of, rather than you're all doing a bit of everything, you have kind of defined roles in terms of who's taking responsibility for different aspects, which is interesting. How have you found that transition, David, in terms of you were the sole boss a number of years ago, and now we'll say you're we'll say it's 50-50, we'll put it like that.
Yeah, no, it's actually worked out well, because probably some of the areas look okay. I suppose we'll call it record keeping. She'd be far better at the computer end of things, and look at the staff all seem to get on well with her. So it was a natural transition that she kept doing the rota and all that, and it's taken pressure off me. I'm quite happy. I'm actually quite happy to have life a little bit easier, although at times I do wonder.
You see, you've handed over a certain amount of responsibilities. I suppose maybe to come back to the farm and animal performance, look, it's been a challenging year maybe all around on a number of fronts, but animal performance-wise, how have you got on this year? Where is animal performance actually at, David?
Yeah, look at animal performance this year. I would say, we're happy enough. Cows, I would say, well, in fact, we've actually had little or no droughts. This year we're going to end up, bar too much rain, we'll end up probably much the same or a little better on milk solids. We could end up towards the 500 kilos
Very good.
of milk solids. Heifers have kind of suffered a little bit. Definitely, uh, keeping them on track was a little bit more difficult.
Yes.
But we're on target. Kind of fats and proteins are up a little bit.
And level of feed, David, just for our listeners.
Uh, well, at the moment they're inside, so cows are on 3 kilos a meal, and silage, good silage, very good silage. Be
Annually,
first good silage.
is it around a ton of feed, or approximately what would you feed for the year?
We aim for about 900 kilos. Last year we were about 1.2 ton. This year we'll probably fall around a ton.
Okay.
Maybe slightly. Yeah, we're yeah. And look at it. Going forward, we'd probably try to reduce that to 3/4 of a ton.
Okay.
Um,
And we might come on to that in terms of your grassland management and that. I suppose the specific topic and um, that I've asked, I suppose, to talk to you today about is, that whole area of farm data, and, how does that aid your decision making? And sure, look at your dairy farming a number of years now, obviously, in terms of, I suppose, that's a change in space, and it's changing all the time. But I suppose, what are the key practices or key technologies you look at in terms of your own business? And then maybe we'll have a chat about, what data you use within them. So when you're looking at KPIs, David, what exactly, I suppose, are you looking at the start of the year?
Look at to be three or four things that would all kind of come into my mind. One is, look, I have to get the cow back in calf fertility, because if the cow calves early and she has more days in milk to give more, and grass is the obvious second, and some would put it first, is that tons of grass grown and kind of utilized. And that's kind of a different ball game now with fertilizer limits, and then the use of clover. And then look at the end of the day, the kind of milk recording, uh, and the kind of for the cell check and the somatic cells and all that,
Like in
kind
that
of
whole
would fit.
animal performance area, really,
Oh,
then on top
yeah,
of all of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Or
Look at
animal health, I
the
should say.
animal health, so like that's important to keep it under tabs at least.
Yeah.
You have a healthy cow the whole time. And lastly, look at, of course, is finance. So
Business.
you have to make money, or else you're not there next year. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
long term, you have to be profitable.
Very
So
good.
you,
So I'm going to maybe start on that breeding one. And I know I've been with yourselves a couple of times over the last couple of years. You're doing lots there in terms of around the breeding replacements, and also in terms of aiding your breeding better quality beef calves as well. But I suppose data, there's so much data available. We've ICBF. I think maybe it's underestimated what we can do with it. If we look at other countries in terms of maybe not having the same availability of data. But what exactly, I suppose, do you use in terms of that sort of data? What do you look for? Is there any such thing as too much data, David? Because there's an awful lot of data falling into farmers' laps nowadays as such. So maybe just explain to
yeah.
us what you do around that.
Well, there is such thing as too much data. I do get confused at times too, but not when it comes to ICBF. It's something that we should all just play around with. If you're not used to it, is just play around with what is available on it. And it's like we would use it, look at the fertility report, uh, we would keep an eye on it, and we would input the information just to make sure if the information is in, you get good information out. We would use the sire advice to try and pick bulls we want. And the first time I actually showed it to my wife, I put in exactly my ideal bull I needed, and no bulls were available on the system.
Yes.
So the reality is, look at you pick your criteria, and look at. I always kind of have a great belief. If you have a fertile cow, first of all, you're going to get more milk. But the other thing, it gives you options, because you then have the choice of taking out the bottom cows, which brings me into the culling part and the cow, the COW index.
Yes.
But the reality is, a fertile cow gives you options, because then you don't need as many heifers. And if you have a few extra heifers, you have the ability there. You can either sell them, or you can replace some of your bottom cows. And it's so the reality is, if you use the information, you can breed a better cow, and then you can also take out the bottom cows.
Yeah, I
In
get
that
you. So
sort of order.
really, yeah, what you're saying there is ultimately in terms of using sire advice to select the bulls. There's also in terms of selection process on that dam side of things now, and in terms of
Yeah.
milk recordings and EBI, is that what you're using to select those, or what exactly?
Yeah, well, we would use kind of, where we don't do the EBI that much, we would definitely do milk solids. But the thing is, I did get caught in the first time I tried it. That last year, some of the cows had a bad year. We got hit with kind of a problem when the drought finished. But what I'm saying is that at the end of the day, it alone, selecting on milk solids to take out the bottom cows is not enough, unless you make sure that you have a couple of years of information. And the cow index is quite good too, but it's just, you need just to be a little bit careful that it's not a 1 year. Some cows just have a bad year.
And the percentage of cows that would have got dairy this year, David, the dairy
Um,
straws, roughly.
we ooh, we used sex semen. We used 120 sex semen straws on the cows,
Yes.
and we did well, not quite all the heifers with sex semen. We did all bar 5 heifers with sex semen, and it was one of the advantages of having collars on heifers. We could see the ones that weren't cycling, and we didn't give them sex semen. But
So
they
best
were on.
part of two-thirds ultimately got beef straws. And I suppose
Yeah,
it's that data that allows you to complete that process, I suppose.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And yeah, but the thing about data is, it's only as good as what you put into it.
Yeah. Grassland management you mentioned, and I know it's a key driver in terms in your own system. Um, the technology around grassland management, I'm going to ask you, like, there's whatever there is, there's maybe 18,000 dairy farmers, 17 to 18,000 dairy farmers. There's not a great enough percentage of measuring grass, but maybe tell me how you do it, and how you use the data to make, I suppose, decisions on your farm with regards to grassland management.
Look at the grassland management. Look, we do it. I then initially went around and I was cutting and clipping and cutting, but I found it quite difficult to do. So we bought a grasshopper, and the advantage of it too is it's GPS, and we actually uh, put the paddocks onto the system with it, so they were all measured with it, and then it is also can be used by anybody, but it's not 100% either. but it's a good tool. And what it does allow us is we can see if we've surpluses or deficits, and we can react quicker to the surpluses and the deficits. And that's the most important part of measuring grass, is the fact that you actually go out and you look, because beforehand, and it brings me back to a little story about kind of Alistair Rain, kind of years ago, told a lad to move the black box around the fields. And in doing so, the guy or person kind of actually saw the paddocks ahead, and in doing so improved their grassland management. And that's most of is actually walking the farm is as important as measuring, because you can see if there's a problem coming ahead of you.
Yeah, it gives you that kind of day to day, and as you say, it gives you that picture into the future as to what you can do. In terms of then and the we'll say that's on the week or day to day and weekly side of things. That whole understanding what you can grow, I suppose, and that's a conversation we've had recently. How does that aid your decision? So obviously you have the day-to-day management, which is very important from a grassland perspective, but it also gives you a bigger picture in terms of the ability of your farm. Maybe just talk to us a little bit about that, because I know you are making decisions in that area.
Yeah. Look, I suppose we're last year we were stocked at 4 cows per hectare. This year we're about 3.8 cows per hectare on the grazing platform. What we found over the last few years, as we kind of really overstocked, is that milk solids actually had dropped, and the other problem we'd run into too is that we'd more deficits, and we were buffer feeding more often, or nearly all the time at some times. And I had two kind of things that are in my mind. I wanted a simple farming system and a profitable farming system, and it definitely wasn't making it a simple farming system. So we've been moving off that kind of high stocking rate and moving back. And I think if we can get to a place, look, we'll go to about 3.5 cows per hectare. But what it'll mean to us is that hopefully we'll have a simpler farming system with less buffering, or little or no buffering, and be in a better place. And hopefully the milk solids will come back up again, and I think they will.
Yeah, and that leaves you, that's as you say, you're coming back to 3.5 cows per hectare on the milking platform. Where roughly does that leave you then, David, whole farm stocking rate?
The whole farm stocking rate will be about 3 or 2.3, 2.2, 2.3. Yeah. Overall stocking rate.
And nearly brings me to my next question in terms of that. You mentioned that whole business and farm finance side of things. And look, you're a long-standing discussion group member, and I know it's something that you are rigid on in terms of completing a profit monitor. Just explain the importance of that for you, maybe, and for your business. And even as you've grown the farm over the years and developed the farm, what role does that play?
I personally think it's important to be benchmarked. And I also think that, kind of farming is, it's for profit. At the end of the day, we have to pay bills and we have to pay everybody. So the reality is that the profit monitor allows you to kind of benchmark and see where you're good against everybody or bad against everybody. And hopefully the areas to improve. Now, you can get frustrated with it because it's hard to kind of improve on areas at times that you need to improve on. Sometimes you have to stand back and look kind of in from kind of far away because sometimes we're too close to it all to actually see where we're doing a bad job.
Yes, I get you. And when you're analyzing your profit monitor, so as you say, in terms of there's benchmarking between yourselves and your fellow discussion group members, but there's probably also benchmarking yourself year to year as to how your physical
Yeah.
characteristics of your farm improves. And look at, as you say, inputs and milk price is going to have an impact, obviously. But in general, where are the trends? Um,
Well, the trends, look at per hectare, we were doing nicely, but we always had a kind of look. The fact in the last few years, I would say, yeah, we kind of have we overshot the runway in a way, in the sense that uh, profit per cow, probably even profit per hectare, actually has been dropping because we're not getting the output or the milk solids out of the cows because there's too many cows and we're buffer feeding too much. So, but then you kind of, it's a hard one to kind of say, like, okay, your variable costs drop if we take a few cows out, but fixed costs stay the same.
yes.
And it's hard to kind of just say that taking out cows is going to make you more money. And it's, you really
If you
have to
didn't
kind of
have the
study.
figures, if you didn't have the
Yeah,
figures, David, I suppose that's the sort of decision that maybe mightn't happen. As you say, you have those figures to say, right, and look at the trends and look at what's happening. If you didn't have that, I suppose, would you be making that decision?
no, no, definitely not. You can see, we can see where we're falling down, and the reality is, it's figures that is allowing us to actually say, yes, look, we could do with a few less cows and we'll make more money.
Yeah,
Now assuming that the milk price is the same, and everything else is the
of
same,
course.
you know,
Yeah.
but
We're after covering off a fair bit in terms of, I suppose how you're using the information on breeding, on grassland, on the within the financial element of your farm. I suppose there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of stuff even that you're using that we haven't touched on. But if you were to pick kind of the 4 or 5 most important records for your farm for our listeners, I suppose, what are they um, in terms of the day-to-day running of your business?
look at the more probably look at records of heat detection,
Mm.
and that pre-service heats is probably one of the most important things to get a good, to get your fertility right, so that you can kind of, the cows are not cycling.
Yeah,
So that'll be on the breeding side of things. Milk recording.
yeah,
There's so much information there, but you have to use it. Which kind of the cell check and everything else. Um, Pasture base, it is absolutely fabulous, and there's a lot in it. Kind of between your autumn planner, your spring planner, and then look at, if you measure grass, when you're short or not short. Thing I didn't mention before is probably is most important part, or is just as important, but nobody thinks about it, and that's kind of soil analysis.
mm,
Because if you don't, if you're, you won't grow the grass unless your lime, P and K are right, and
it sounds
um,
simple, but it is that one in terms of that soil analysis piece and knowing where you're at. It's often taken as a given, but often overlooked at farm level.
yeah,
Um,
and a nutrient plan then to go with it,
yeah,
and like, now that look at, I kind of Lakeland kind of offer kind of a low price kind of service, and I do it every 2 years, even though kind of for derogation you only need it every four. But the thing is, it's to keep a good eye on your where the farm is going, and at
yeah,
least then you don't kind of, 4 years is a long time. And if you're going the wrong way, it's a real long time. But so the reality is, it is important, and then look at put the nutrients where they're wanted, not just dump it onto a paddock. Slurry, and the P&K should be put where it's needed, not everywhere.
Yep, very good point. Very good point. And anything else on the business side of things then, or how do you keep that? You complete your profit monitor. Is there anything else you're doing, David, or
Well,
do you keep it fairly
we do,
straightforward?
no, we do kind of look at we do a budget,
Yeah.
kind of, and we would keep it updated over the year so that we actually know where we stand, kind of financially. And I know it's easy to say that you can change. It's not as simple, but at least you're armed with the knowledge that you have money or you don't have money in your cash flow, and if you can always kind of put off a bit of capital expenditure,
Yes.
or you can cut back on something. So it's good to do a budget and to have it updated regularly
I think that's
and
a good
kind of
place.
work on it.
Sorry, David. Yeah, I think that's a good place. Oh, I'm not going to hold you much longer. We're on for nearly 25 minutes or half an hour. That's a good place maybe to finish up. As you say, in terms of that cash budget and having an understanding of the farm finances, you've given us a great insight into your own farm and I suppose how it has evolved, how you're using the data. But from what I've gathered from that, it's really you're selecting the data within them key practices in terms of breeding, grassland management, the milk recording from an animal health and also from a breeding perspective. And then it's tying it all together. It's tying it all together with that farm business element piece, profit monitor, cash flow budget, as we mentioned there. So look thanks a million. It's always great to have farmers on the podcast. Thank you, David, for your time, and we wish you a successful end to 2023 and hopefully the spring of 2024 is kind. Thanks, David.
Thank you, and hopefully, thanks a million. Appreciate it.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast, and my thanks to David Hannon for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm James Dunne, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.